welcome to the Divorce Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. I am so thrilled that you've tuned in today because I am here with the founders of Our Happy Divorce, Ben Heldfond and Nikki DeBartolo. Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. I'm so excited to talk to you guys today about your happy divorce and how actually ending your marriage brought you guys closer together. It's a great story, everybody. I can't wait for you to hear it. They're going to share it with you. But before we jump in, I would love to share a little bit more with you about both Ben and Nikki. So both Ben and Nikki understand that no divorce is ever easy, especially for those of us going through it. And after nearly a decade together, the couple decided to split and find ways to happily navigate their divorce and created Our Happy Divorce, a service empowering and inspiring people to think differently about divorce, co-parenting, step-parenting, and what it means to put kids first. They also co-authored the book, Our Happy Divorce, How Ending Our Marriage Brought Us Closer Together, and have been featured on Good Morning America, Yahoo, Fatherly, and Parents. And one of my favorite fun facts about both Nikki and Ben is that they happen to live 7 houses apart from each other, which is amazing. So I'm sure that there's people listening and tuning in going, how do the words happy and divorce go together? How is that possible? How did you guys get there? And your story is fascinating. And I would really love for you guys to share with our audience today how it is that you've been able to get to where you are together as co-parents and best friends, which I've heard you say and call one another, as well as, you know, in building new lives for yourselves.
Patiently.
Very true.
It's a good one, Nick. I don't think I've heard you say it, but yeah, I think that it is the point. You say co-parents, and we use that word, but you take away the co, and you have parents, right? And at the end of the day, Nikki and I made a choice to get married. We had a choice to have a child, and then we made a choice to get divorced. But throughout that whole process, I think it didn't come right away. I think that's important. But through that, we agreed that we can never stop being parents. And I think that anybody who has who is a parent understands the true word and the true meaning of selflessness, right? And you know, I took an inherent vow to my son when they handed him to me. Before, you know, I said, "Oh God, what do I do now?" But you know, to protect him.
No.
And I'm like, please don't send me home.
I'm like, can I just stay here a little longer?
Yeah.
Can't you just come home and feed him like you do at night? And, you know, I'll lay here in the hospital bed. But you know, and that's an inherent vow. Didn't necessarily say it, but, you know, when you decide to be a parent, you have to put the kids first. And, you know, what's best for them. And that should be parents when they're married or when they're divorced. And Nikki and I got to a place, look, through, you know, about me particularly going down a path of a traditional divorce, right? And all of a sudden, all of that, putting my kids first and what was best for Asher and that selflessness went out the door because I was filled with so much anger, resentment, quite frankly, hatred towards Nikki. And I was blindly going to go down the path that my parents went down, and the same a lot of people go down, where it's not intentional. It's just they haven't dealt with those overwhelming feelings that make people do things when they're not completely aware because they have tunnel vision. Like I had tunnel vision. I was going to destroy Nikki. I was going to, you know, make sure that Asher found out what a fraud she was, at least what a fraud I thought she was. And that was it. And it wasn't until I got to the point of, you know what, this isn't, I know how this path ends because I've seen it. I've experienced it with my parents. So I think experience is important too. And Nikki, on the other hand, Nikki had a completely different experience.
Right. I didn't grow up with divorce around me. My parents are still married 52 years later. So my idea when we first split up was trying to stay as sane as possible, but also trying to keep Asher sort of trying to give him the life that I had growing up. I didn't want
normalcy,
to, so I wanted to keep him as normal as possible. Whatever normal is to each family, but I never grew up with split parents. I didn't have to go back and forth. So I wanted to make sure he didn't miss out on something with each parent just because we weren't together anymore.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the most important turning point that we both came to, and in the book, don't buy it if you want to, try to find a villain, or this isn't a Hollywood script. Like there's no villain. We don't talk about the dirty details of what happened in the divorce. Because at the end of the day, and this is why we have the relationship we have, is because we cleaned up the past. We didn't live and make decisions on the past or what somebody did or what somebody didn't do. It was equal parts. The blame was at each of our feet.
Yeah. And I love that you say that. I don't mean to interrupt you, Ben, but I love that you say that because I always talk about how you've got to own your side of the street. Marriages take two people, and it takes two people to make a marriage, and it takes two people to have a marriage that doesn't succeed. And it's the marriage that fails, not you as people. So I think it's beautiful that you both owned your part, right, in how the marriage fell apart. And that is something that a lot of people have trouble with and struggle with. And I think that's why people stay in this place of anger, because it's so easy to blame other people.
Right. And one of the hardest things I had to do was go soul searching and work on my part of the relationship.
Right.
And I worked with a guy and we went through it. And whenever I'd start talking about buts, or if only Nikki had done that, he would cut me off. He'd go, no, this isn't about Nikki. This is about what you did. We need to, this is just solely spotlight on Ben and his action. And the net result was, at the end of it, I looked at it and I was like, you know what? I wouldn't want to be married to me either. Right? I was a miserable person. I wasn't I had this idea that I was the perfect father and I was the perfect husband. And that was just me buying my own BS, because I wasn't. And I needed to own.
Sometimes we all think we're perfect. It just takes us a little while to realize that we're really imperfect. And
imperfectly perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And so then, and then I had to make it right. And I had to, get right with Nikki and call her, and we sat down in a coffee shop and I made amends. And, it wasn't with any expectation. It wasn't that I was going to do it and I was going to sit on my high horse and I was going to say I was sorry, and then all of it was on her, right? But it was just done because I needed to clean up that wreckage. Yeah. And then, ironically, or not ironically, but without expectation, Nikki then apologized to me at that coffee shop. And from that moment,
I spent some time working on myself, trying to figure out, and realizing that, as Ben said, I wouldn't have wanted to be married to me either. Like I probably had no business being married at that time because I was very selfish. I mean, thank God for learning how to be a really good mom very quickly. I'm like, it worked, but there was things that I had to go through in my life in order to, and therapy definitely helps. And I think it was just, I got to the point too, where I was like, okay, this is what it is. So let's just go from here, instead of keep turning our heads backwards to figure out, oh, well, we could have done this. We should have done this. We could have done this. Well, if he wouldn't have done this, or if I wouldn't have done this, we just had to look forward and just keep moving.
Yeah. And that's what Our Happy Divorce was founded on. The foundation of Our Happy Divorce was honesty, accountability, and forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And look, after that meeting at the coffee shop where we got real for each other for the first time since I've known her, or since she's known me, probably since and the last time, but is that what now it wasn't all of a sudden snap and it was our happy divorce, right? Then it was like, okay, now what do we do? Right? We've cleaned up the wreckage. We're not going to live our lives, based on what happened. And, now what do we do? And it was like, okay. And then we slowly just started, faking it till we made it, trying to, put on our big boy pants. And, when Nikki was around, when we were around each other, we tried to put on that smile, put on that, everything's fine. Even though, our insides were doing, ripping each other apart, but eventually it just started
probably ripping each other apart too for a little while there, but
yeah, and through
which is
each
normal, right?
Yeah.
Right, but through each sort of landmine, if you will, that are presented through the process of bringing somebody else into the relationship or the divorce, right? There's just landmines everywhere, and through each one of the landmines, we either avoided them or we stepped on them, but then just kept on.
Yeah.
Right. And just kept on going. Right. And realized it wasn't perfect. We lost our temper in the beginning a lot. Like we let our ego win sometimes instead of this new, like, motto of what's best for Asher. We didn't live perfectly. We didn't do it perfectly, but we never gave up. Right. And and then all of a sudden things became a little bit easier. Yeah. And normal.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that is something you guys raise a really great point that I just want to, give more attention to, is the fact that, everybody wishes that there was like a magic pill or a playbook that they could follow to make this easier. And what is so important, I think, for everybody to hear is that we all have our own process, right? Every relationship is different, and every person in the relationship are different. And the important piece is that you continue to try new things, you continue to honor what comes up, right? But then you have the power to shift, you have the power to make different choices, not only in your own life, but how you're interacting with each other. And the other thing I'm hearing you guys say is that at the core was Asher. Every step of the way that you guys almost recalibrated was bringing Asher back to the center, right? Instead of putting him in the middle. And I think that that's such an incredible thing that you guys model and exemplify, because it's not always perfect, right?
No.
And we don't get it right, but it's remembering our kids that, it's that wake up call. You're like, oh shoot, the kids.
Right. And it came down to a pretty simple equation for us. It's so crazy to say every time I've said it, I said it a lot, but there was no social media back then. There was MySpace. But there were no support groups.
You just made us all really old, Ben.
Really old.
Which is crazy because it was only 12 years ago, right?
I know, don't.
Right. But there was no, right now they're great resources. They're great people
who are doing. There was no guide for us.
Right.
Like there wasn't a guide. Like there weren't all these people for us to talk to.
I was like, where was Brene and Marianne back then? Right.
Exactly. Or where was Gwyneth Paltrow with conscious coupling or whatever it is. But so we just kept it simple, right? We decided to make decisions what was best for Asher. So what's the simplest equation that we have? 2 + 2 = 4, right? And if we looked at each decision and the answer to the equation had to come to 4 for Asher. Now, some of those decisions seemed like, I know for me, the answer was 1,000.
Yeah, or
right?
-4.
Or make -4 or whatever, so far away from the real answer,
right?
Because they usually affected my ego, right? A perfect example is Nikki, talking to me about bringing somebody else into the relationship. And she just asked me, because she knew I was going to go out and do, whatever I was going to do, that she just asked me to not bring anybody around our son until I was sure, or there was a meaningful relationship, or, because she didn't want that revolving door. Now, from my standpoint, 4 would have been, who the hell are you to tell me who I can and can't bring around my kid? This is not your decision, right? But 4 for Asher is, she's right. It is not a good thing for him to have this revolving door of Mercedes and Crystal and Diamond and, or whatever it is, right? I mean, it truly is.
This time, not me.
Yeah, she usually says that, but it's true, right? So that's just one small example. Like, we just had made decisions off of what was best for Asher, and we say it a lot, and it might sound redundant, and it's redundant in the book, and even our editor said you have to take some of these out but literally,
that's
like,
how we got to where we are.
Right. I mean, I remember after a baseball game, and Nikki started dating Chad, and I I got a test right out of the gate, because it was shortly after our divorce, and we knew Chad. He was around friends of ours when we were married. So I got this test right out of the gate of like, okay, you're the
Let's see how well this thing's working.
Right. So there was one, the first time that we were all together was after a baseball game. Asher, I was the coach. Asher, after the game, ran over to Chad and gave him a big hug, and I'm sitting there just, the feelings, the anger, the sadness, the idea that someone else, my kid just ran over to another man that's dating my ex-wife. It was just awful. But on the outside, or in the inside of my head, I'm like, what's best for Asher? What's best for Asher?
Mm-hmm.
What's, this is a good
like,
guy.
I want to pull my heart out right now, but
I mean, the two brain cells I have left were throwing stones at each other. One was going, screw that guy, he's an idiot. And the other one's going, what's best for Asher? What's best for Asher? This is, Nikki's going to date somebody. So I went over, put my smile on, gave him a hug, and let Asher know that, to the best of my ability, I don't know if it came across as authentic, but, to the best of my ability at that time, made clear to Asher that it was okay for him to love this man.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think that is a great segue into, not only was this about remembering Asher, what you guys have also done is, you've also been very inclusive of each other's spouses in your lives. And you've even gone as far as to blend your families together. And, I love that you use the term also, you have a blended modern family, which I think is so unique and special. Hey, it's Wendy. I wanted to take a quick break from the conversation to say thank you for listening, and to also share something really exciting that I am launching on June 9th. So I am putting together another free online summit called Beyond Divorce: Discover the Secrets to Disconnect, Set Boundaries, and Move Forward. So if you're somebody who's thinking about, or perhaps you're in the process of divorce, or even on the other side, and you're feeling stuck because the courts are closed and you think that you can't move forward, well, I'm here to tell you that that is just not true. The goal of this summit is to support you and to help you navigate the emotional side that you are currently struggling with. I'm interviewing over 33 experts about how to support your kids, how to set boundaries, co-parenting with a narcissist, how to practice self-compassion, how to be financially independent, conscious co-parenting, how to stay healthy, and so much more. I have had so many aha moments during all of these interviews, and I just know you will too. Oh, and by the way, each expert is providing a free gift just for you. So please visit beyonddivorcesummit.com to register for free. And now let's jump back into the conversation. How did you guys get to that point? I know, Ben, when you embraced Chad into Asher's life, into your life, embraced him with Nikki. And then I know you are also remarried and you have Asher has siblings from your new marriage. So how did you guys get from, sort of the introduction of who you were dating to getting to a place where you're both remarried, starting these new families and blending them together?
I think first and foremost, our partners in the beginning, we were very upfront with what we were trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And I think that they basically, with the lack of a better word, had to get on board. So, I mean, I think in the beginning, it was probably hard for them too. Sure. Because they're like, I think, as a lot of people say, if you two can get along like you do right now, why aren't you together? Well,
Well, it doesn't always
If
mean
that's
you
what
should
you
be
get out of
married.
it, if that's what you get out of the book, we might need to come out.
Yeah.
Might
No,
need to
but I mean,
rewrite this thing.
I was going to say version
I mean,
2.
people would have said that to me, like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
guys get along so well. Why aren't you? And I'm like, because it's a different kind of getting along.
Right.
Like we get along now, like we realize that we can be friends. We can't be husband and wife.
Married.
But
Yeah, we
can-
love each other. We're not in love with each other.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I was
And-
trying to say. Yeah.
And the other thing, like that isn't, we talked about landmines earlier. That is one of the biggest ones, right? Is bringing somebody else into the relationship, because nothing hits harder to one's ego than having your son around another woman or another man. But at the end of the day, because of, the motto, what's best for Asher, and 2 + 2 is we both, and again, it formed into something we could never imagine. For a perfect, another example of it is Nikki got married 3 or 4 years after we got divorced. Chad called me and asked me to coffee. And ironically, we went to the same coffee shop and sat at the same table that Nikki and I had sat at. And he asked me for permission, or if it was okay for him to marry Nikki and to be in Asher's life. And although I tried to talk him out of it,
and why would you ever want to marry her?
Why would you ever want to marry her? But he was set on it. But what it showed, like, he was going to do it anyways, right? But at the end of the day, what it showed me was that he understood what Nikki and I were trying to accomplish, and he had respect for it. And at that point, it was good. But on the other side of it is Nikki called me, and the best thing about what we do, the other thing it's built on is communication. And Nikki called me and she said, "Look, I just want to let you know, I'm not inviting you to the wedding, but I want you to know why." And she then went into what, 2 + 2 = 4, whatever, that there was no dispute about her rationale, right? She didn't want people worrying about what I was feeling or awkwardness that I was feeling during her wedding, which was great. It was fine. 2 years later, I get married, and it wasn't like I'm going to invite Nikki to just show her that, how big of a person I am. But our relationship had grown so much in just those 2 years that it was a no-brainer that not only her whole family, her sisters, parents, the whole DeBartolo clan came to my wedding. Not because it was done out of any motives, but because that's where our life was. Yeah. And it just was, but it's 2 years, relatively short, but it just how much our relationship has shifted in 2 years. And even since we wrote the book, it's gotten better. So, it's only going to get, better. It's only going to get more natural, but it is a process. And I really can't emphasize that enough to people listening who have read the book, who look at our story and go, this is ridiculous, right? This is absurd, because we start at the present. I mean, Nikki and I took Asher to Africa on a safari, just the two of us, in August. And yeah, absurd, ridiculous, but natural for us. Yeah. And it's not, there's no...
It was weird for people at the hotels, I'm sure.
It was weird for everybody. They're like, "What are you guys into?
Yeah.
Is this a swinger, polygamy? What is the deal with it?"
Well, and I think that is, that's where people's minds go, right? Because they just can't fathom this. And what I think is also really important to point out that, you each are different people than you were when you were married. And you now see the new versions of each other, right? And that must have taken some work, not only in yourself, which you both have admitted to doing, which we all do, you have to, but you also acknowledge the other person and see them as this new person, which I think so many of us have such a hard time doing, right? Because you always want to go back to, there's days where my ex-husband gets me back into, same thing. I was not a good person many days to my ex-husband. And I admit that, but there's times where he gets me back into that old version of me. How do you guys, does that happen to you? Or is it just that stuff is gone?
Yeah, we still argue.
Yeah. Yes. Don't we all?
Still argue. And I think,
look,
I
go ahead, Nick.
I mean, feisty and fiery. So, I mean, I definitely sometimes have to take a few steps back. I mean, sometimes we'll go like a day and we'll just be like, oh, like we need a day just to sort of like calm down or like, you know, whatever it is, because sometimes my personality gets the best of me.
Sure.
But the beautiful thing is like Nikki's, and this is where the in love and love thing is that when you love somebody, you can accept them for who they are completely. Right. And even when you're in love with somebody, you can't selectively love some part of them and not the other part of them.
Right.
And so, you know, we joked that this book took us 4 years to write. It was my idea. I, you know, had to sort of nudge Nikki to do it because there was no way I was doing this book on my own. Right. Sure. It had to include Nikki.
Yeah.
And we'd get in a fight and she would say, I'm not doing your effing book, or you can stick, you know, the book where the, you know, the sun doesn't shine. And so, but it eventually got done. But when Nikki and I fight today, you know, she usually will say some, you know, let's see.
They're not always that bad. He just knows that I'm right sometimes and he doesn't like to hear it.
Colorful. She'll use some colorful language. You know, and then I'm like, I'm not never talking to this woman again. You know, this happy divorce is over. We're going to have to we're going to somehow have to clean this up because we have it down on paper. And, you know, and then all of a sudden the imposter syndrome kicks in and Nikki says, you know, I feel like a fraud and I'm not doing Good Morning America. We got to fight the night before Good Morning America.
Oh, we did. I don't even remember what it was about.
But then it cools off. I don't, you know, I'm not talking to her. And then all of a sudden she'll send me a text out of nowhere. Not, I'm sorry. Not, you know, anything.
I'll just change the subject.
It was just change the subject. But to me now, I understand Nikki saying, I'm sorry, Ben, you know, in her own way, right? You know, I'm sorry. And that's why we joke that
saying, I'm sorry.
that coffee shop meeting was the first and only time that Nikki and I really have apologized to each other. Now, I will say I'm sorry sometimes, but, you know, Nikki, you know, has a hard time doing that.
As do most women, Ben.
Yeah. Well, as do most men, right? I mean, you know, and that in lies the problem is that sometimes it's hard for people to, you know, say I'm sorry, but, you know, it's easy to say I'm sorry, but it's usually I'm sorry, but.
Right.
I'm sorry, but you did this.
Right.
You know, and that is where Nikki and I went right if we did anything right in the beginning.
Yeah.
When I apologized to Nikki, it was, I am sorry for my actions. Here's what I did. Here's what I did. It wasn't, I'm sorry. Here's what I did, but it was because you did this.
Right. It was no finger pointing with it.
There was no finger pointing. And once you say you're sorry.
Leave the word but out.
Yeah. But has got to go out because anything that comes after but.
You're blaming somebody else.
You blame,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and what I always like to say, and I actually say this to my clients and I actually say this to my kids, it's not always about saying that you're sorry. It's about, to me, what is more valuable, and this is what I'm hearing you guys did with one another, is taking responsibility for your actions, for your language, right? For your behavior, and committing to not doing XYZ anymore, right?
Right.
And that I remember, that's how I've shifted in my language with my ex-husband. And what's interesting is what he hears instead, you know, just being the person that he is. But when you're taking responsibility, it's about you. It's about healing you, right? And allowing the other person to see that you're owning, again, getting back to owning what you did, how it is that you contributed. Right. And I think it's beautiful how you both have taken responsibility and how you are also like the rest of us, right? It's not like you guys do this perfectly every single day,
No.
you know, that we all navigate these waters. We take every day as it comes. We take every circumstance as they come, and we do our best. And I want to commend you both for always putting Asher in the center of your lives. And I think it is a beautiful example to everybody tuning in and listening as to how it is that you guys can navigate your divorce and the process moving forward to create the best type of relationship you can with one another. So I really want to thank you guys so much for being so authentic and sharing as much as you guys always do. It is such a pleasure. I love hanging out and talking with you both. So thank you for being my guest today.
Oh, well, thank you. And you know, it's people like you and other people in this community that we've met. We're just so happy to be, you know, just one voice in it, that there's so many people that are getting it now, right? Are truly through their own experience, or lawyers who are sick and tired of seeing the bickering and seeing the arguing, that they're starting to transition to more mediation or collaborative process. And to us, like that is the deal. And our happy divorce takes many different shapes and sizes and looks and feels. But it's, you know, happy divorce, different divorce, you know, happier kids, not weapons. and so, you know, we're grateful for you and for sharing your platform with us on two different occasions, and for what you're doing every day. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's so sweet. Thank you guys so much. And everybody, if you want to get in touch with Ben and Nikki, all of their information's in the show notes. They also have provided you guys with access to their book. There's a free gift there for you. If you buy one book, you get one book free, and it's with a 20% discount. So thank you guys so much. You guys have got to read the book. It's really an inspiring story. You hear from Ben and Nikki and many other people in their family who've contributed, and it's just a beautiful story. So thank you guys again for being here today. And for everybody tuning in, thank you so much for being here, sending you tons of love, light, and joy. And I will hear and talk to you guys next week. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know, or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram at Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.